In recent months, a number of Russian warships have been spotted docked in Cuban ports. This development has drawn international attention, but surprisingly, the United States has stated that it does not see these warships as a threat. The presence of Russian military vessels in Cuba is significant, especially considering the turbulent history between the two nations during the Cold War. However, US officials have maintained a calm demeanor, asserting that these ships do not pose a direct threat to national security. This perspective is rooted in a complex web of historical, technological, and strategic factors. By dissecting these factors, we can gain a clearer understanding of why the US government remains unperturbed by the presence of Russian warships so close to its shores. Through a balanced examination of both Russian and American viewpoints, we will see why the US considers the situation under control and free from immediate danger. The history of US-Russian naval interactions is long and fraught with tension, especially when it comes to Cuba. The most notable historical event is the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, when the Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, leading to a near-catastrophic standoff between the superpowers. During the Cold War, both the US and the Soviet Union maintained a significant naval presence around the globe. Despite numerous close encounters and confrontations, direct naval conflict was largely avoided thanks to careful diplomacy and mutual deterrence. In the years following the Cold War, the dynamics shifted as the Soviet Union dissolved, and Russia emerged as its successor state. While Russia retained a formidable navy, its global reach and influence diminished compared to its Soviet predecessor. The US, meanwhile, continued to expand its naval capabilities, maintaining a significant presence in strategic regions worldwide. Given this historical backdrop, the sight of Russian warships in Cuba might seem reminiscent of past tensions. Today's geopolitical landscape is shaped by a multitude of factors, including economic interdependence, regional conflicts, and the rise of new global powers. In this context, the US does not view Russian warships in Cuba as an immediate threat. Several reasons underpin this assessment, starting with the nature of current US-Russia relations. While tensions between the US and Russia have not disappeared, they are characterized more by regional disputes and cyber conflicts than by the global ideological battle of the Cold War. The US is more focused on the rise of China, conflicts in the Middle East, and maintaining stability in Europe than on direct military confrontations with Russia in the Western Hemisphere. Additionally, the technology and capabilities of modern naval forces have changed significantly. Satellite surveillance, advanced radar, and intelligence sharing mechanisms allow the US to closely monitor the movements of Russian warships. This technological edge provides a level of confidence in being able to predict and counter any potential threats. From the Russian perspective, the presence of their warships in Cuba serves several strategic purposes. Firstly, it demonstrates Russia's ability to project power and maintain a global naval presence, countering the perception that it is entirely focused on regional conflicts and its immediate neighborhood. This is part of Russia's broader strategy to assert itself as a major player on the global stage. Russia also views its naval activities in Cuba as a means of strengthening its ties with a longtime ally in the Western Hemisphere. By docking warships in Cuban ports, Russia signals its ongoing commitment to supporting its allies. Moreover, these naval maneuvers are a form of strategic signaling to the US and NATO. By deploying warships near American shores, Russia aims to remind its adversaries of its military capabilities and to deter potential aggression. It's a classic example of using military presence to achieve geopolitical ends without resorting to direct confrontation. Finally, from an internal perspective, these displays of military strength bolster national pride and support for the government. Section 5. American perspective. From the American viewpoint, the presence of Russian warships in Cuba is seen through a strategic and pragmatic lens. US officials have emphasized that while they are monitoring the situation, they do not consider these vessels to pose an immediate threat. There are several reasons why the US maintains this stance. Firstly, the US has unparalleled intelligence and surveillance capabilities. Advanced satellite systems, reconnaissance aircraft, and naval assets allow the US to track and monitor the movements of Russian warships with high precision. This surveillance ensures that any potential threat can be identified and neutralized well in advance. Additionally, U.S. military power in the region is overwhelming. The U.S. Navy operates numerous bases and fleets in the Atlantic and Caribbean, ensuring a rapid and effective response to any maritime threat. American policymakers also recognize that the global strategic environment has shifted. The primary focus of U.S. defense strategy is on countering the rise of China and addressing asymmetric threats such as cyber warfare and terrorism. Section 6. Technological considerations. Modern naval warfare is heavily influenced by technological advancements. Both the US and Russia possess sophisticated naval technologies, but the US holds a significant edge in several key areas. This technological superiority is a crucial factor in why the US does not view Russian warships in Cuba as a major threat. One of the primary technological advantages is the US's extensive network of surveillance and reconnaissance assets. The US operates a fleet of advanced satellites capable of monitoring ship movements across the globe. These satellites provide real-time data on the location and activities of Russian warships, allowing the US to maintain situational awareness. In addition to satellites, the US Navy employs state-of-the-art radar and sonar systems. These systems can detect and track ships and submarines with high accuracy, even at great distances. The US also possesses superior naval firepower. Its fleets are equipped with advanced missile systems, such as the Aegis combat system, which can intercept and destroy incoming threats. Section 7. Strategic interests. The strategic interests of the US and Russia play a significant role in shaping their responses to the presence of Russian warships in Cuba. For the US, its strategic priorities are centered on maintaining regional stability and protecting its economic and military interests in the Western Hemisphere. The US has a long-standing policy of preventing foreign powers from establishing a significant military presence in the Americas, known as the Monroe Doctrine. However, in the current context, the US does not view the presence of a few Russian warships in Cuba as a violation of this doctrine. Instead, it is seen as a manageable situation that does not pose a direct threat to US interests. Moreover, the US is focused on countering the influence of other global powers, such as China. The primary strategic challenge for the US is in the Asia-Pacific region, where China's military and economic ambitions pose a significant threat. In this broader context, the presence of Russian warships in Cuba is a relatively minor concern. For Russia, the deployment of warships to Cuba serves multiple strategic objectives. Section 8. Diplomatic relations. Diplomatic relations between the US and Russia are a critical factor in managing the presence of Russian warships in Cuba. Despite ongoing tensions, both nations recognize the importance of maintaining open lines of communication to prevent misunderstandings and manage potential conflicts. The US and Russia have established various channels for military-to-military communication. These channels allow for the exchange of information and coordination to avoid accidental confrontations at sea. By maintaining these lines of communication, both nations can ensure that their naval operations do not escalate into unintended conflicts. Diplomatic engagement also extends to broader discussions on security and strategic issues. Regular dialogues and negotiations provide a platform for addressing concerns and finding common ground. This diplomatic approach helps to build trust and reduce the risk of miscalculations. Additionally, international organizations and treaties play a role in managing naval interactions. Section 9. Media and public perception. Media coverage and public perception play a significant role in shaping the narrative around the presence of Russian warships in Cuba. The way these events are reported and interpreted can influence public opinion and government responses. In the US, media coverage of Russian warships in Cuba has been relatively measured. While the presence of these ships is noted, it is often framed within the broader context of US-Russia relations and the current geopolitical landscape. This balanced reporting helps to prevent unnecessary panic and ensures that the public understands the situation. Public perception is also shaped by statements from government officials. US leaders have emphasized that they do not view the presence of Russian warships as a direct threat. These reassurances help to calm public fears and provide a sense of stability. In Russia, media coverage tends to emphasize the strength and capability of the Russian Navy. Section 10. Conclusion. In conclusion, the presence of Russian warships in Cuba, while noteworthy, is not viewed as a significant threat by the United States. This assessment is based on a combination of historical context, current geopolitical considerations, technological advantages, and strategic interests. Both the US and Russia have evolved their strategies and priorities since the Cold War, resulting in a more measured approach to such developments. Diplomatic engagement and effective communication between the two nations further mitigate the risk of conflict. By understanding the complex factors at play, it becomes clear why the US remains confident that the presence of Russian warships in Cuba does not pose an immediate threat.